The blood tasted like copper pennies and regret. I pressed the paper napkin to my split lip and watched my daughter-in-law's face contort with rage, her hand still raised from the slap that had silenced every conversation in Margie's diner. "You forgot your wallet!" Vanessa hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Again! Because you're a useless old lady who can't remember anything." I said nothing. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. I had learned a long time ago that silence was the most powerful weapon in any arsenal. 43 years with the National Security Agency had taught me that. 37 of those years spent in rooms that didn't officially exist, analyzing threats that would never make the news, making decisions that kept people alive without them ever knowing they had been in danger. My son Brian sat across from me, staring at his coffee cup like it contained the secrets of the universe. He didn't look up when his wife hit me. He didn't flinch. He had stopped flinching months ago. I had watched the light go out of my boy's eyes slowly, year by year, as Vanessa tightened her grip on his life. First, she isolated him from his friends, then from his colleagues, then from me. "Well?" Vanessa demanded. "What do you have to say for yourself?" I dabbed at my lip again. The napkin came away red. I folded it carefully, precisely, the way I used to fold classified documents before feeding them into the shredder. Then I placed it in my purse. The diner was frozen around us. Margie herself stood behind the counter, coffee pot suspended in midair. 2 truckers in the corner booth had stopped mid-bite. A young mother was covering her daughter's eyes. Everyone was watching, but no one was moving. That was the thing about violence. It paralyzed witnesses as effectively as it paralyzed victims. Vanessa leaned closer, her perfume cloying and aggressive. "I asked you a question, Ruth." I looked past her, past Brian's bowed head, past the horrified faces of strangers. I looked at the small black dome in the corner of the ceiling. The security camera. It had a direct feed to the diner's recording system, which was stored on a cloud server, which was backed up automatically every 6 hours. I knew this because I had checked when we first started coming here for our monthly family lunches, the lunches that had become exercises in humiliation, where Vanessa found new ways to remind me that I was old, useless, and unwanted. I caught my own reflection in the window beside our booth, 67 years old, gray hair pulled back in a simple bun, cardigan sweater, sensible shoes, reading glasses on a chain around my neck, the picture of a harmless grandmother. "I'm sorry about the wallet," I said quietly. "It won't happen again." Vanessa smiled. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered prey and was savoring the moment before the kill. "It better not. Brian works too hard to support your forgetful—" She never finished the sentence. I raised my left hand to adjust my glasses, letting my sleeve fall back just enough. The watch on my wrist was unremarkable. Silver band, simple face, the kind of watch you'd expect a retired grandmother to wear. But there was a small button on the side, recessed so it couldn't be pressed accidentally. Nothing visible happened. No sound, no light, no indication that anything had changed. But somewhere across town, in a building that appeared on no maps and employed people who officially didn't exist, a red light began to blink on a monitoring station. I had 32 years of service. I had saved lives that would never be counted, stopped attacks that would never be reported, kept secrets that would never be told. When I retired, they gave me a ceremony in a windowless room, a medal I couldn't display, and a watch. "For emergencies," Director Morrison had said. "Real emergencies. We take care of our own, Ruth. Always." I had never pressed the button before. Not when Harold died of cancer and I sat alone in a hospital room holding his hand as the monitors went flat. Not when I discovered that my retirement account had been drained by a financial advisor who thought old ladies were easy marks. Not when Brian stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped being the son I had raised. But when Vanessa's palm connected with my face, when I tasted blood in a diner where I used to debrief agents over apple pie, when my own son looked away like I was a stranger, something shifted. "Is there a problem here?" A man's voice, young, nervous. I looked up to see one of the truckers standing beside our table, hands clenched at his sides. Brave. Stupid, but brave. "Mind your own business," Vanessa snapped. "Ma'am, I saw what you did. That's assault." "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead. Call them. Tell them a daughter-in-law got frustrated with her senile mother-in-law. See how seriously they take it." The trucker hesitated. He wanted to help. I could see it in his eyes. But he didn't know how. Most people didn't. That was the tragedy of domestic violence. It happened in plain sight, and everyone looked away because they didn't know what to do. "It's fine," I said softly. "Please, I don't want any trouble." The trucker looked at me with something like pity. Then he returned to his booth, shaking his head. Vanessa laughed. "See, Brian? Your mother knows her place. Don't you, Ruth?" Brian still wouldn't look at me. My beautiful boy, who had been curious and kind and full of questions as a child. My son, who had called me every Sunday for 30 years, who had cried at his father's funeral, who had promised he would always take care of me. He had believed Vanessa when she told him I was difficult. He had believed her when she said I was controlling. He had believed her when she insisted that limiting contact was healthy boundaries. Now he sat in a diner booth while his wife hit his mother, and he didn't say a word. I wondered how long it had taken Vanessa to break him. I wondered what threats she had used, what manipulations, what slow erosion of his confidence and identity. I wondered if the man I had raised still existed somewhere inside this shell, or if he was gone forever. "We should go," Brian said finally, his voice barely audible. "I have work in the morning." "Yes," Vanessa agreed, standing up. "Your mother has ruined another nice meal, as usual." I reached for my purse, moving slowly, the way old ladies were expected to move. My hand brushed against the folded napkin with my blood on it. Evidence, documentation, the building blocks of a case. I followed them out of the diner, playing my part. The doddering grandmother, the unwanted burden, the useless old lady. The Virginia evening was warm and humid. The parking lot half empty. Vanessa's white BMW gleamed under the streetlights. Brian walked 3 steps behind her, head down, shoulders hunched. I felt them before I saw them. A subtle shift in the air, the distant rumble of multiple engines, approaching fast but controlled. The kind of precision driving they taught at the farm, where CIA operatives learned the art of tactical movement. Vanessa was unlocking her car when the first SUV appeared at the entrance of the parking lot. Black, government plates, tinted windows, then the second, and the third, fourth, fifth. They blocked every exit with military precision, forming a perimeter around the parking lot in less than 8 seconds. Doors opened simultaneously. Men in tactical gear emerged, weapons not drawn but visible, moving with the coordinated efficiency of a unit that had trained together for years. Vanessa spun around, her face cycling through confusion, fear, and outrage. "What the hell is this? Brian, call the police." Brian didn't move. He was staring at the SUVs, at the armed men, at the impossible scene unfolding around him. The lead agent approached, Samuel Torres. I had recruited him 23 years ago, fresh out of the Marines. Trained him myself. Watched him rise through the ranks to become one of the best field operatives in the agency's history. He stopped 3 feet from me and snapped to attention. His salute was perfect, crisp, the salute of a soldier to a commanding officer. "Commander Harper, we received your signal. We are ready." Vanessa's face went white. "Commander, what? Brian, what is happening?" Samuel turned to her, his expression professionally blank. "Ma'am, you need to step away from the vehicle. Slowly. Hands where we can see them." "This is insane. Brian, tell them this is your mother. She's just a retired secretary or something." I stepped forward then, slowly, deliberately, letting the mask of the harmless grandmother fall away, letting them see, for the first time, the woman I really was. "Vanessa Collins Harper," I said. My voice was different now, harder, colder, the voice I had used in interrogation rooms and situation rooms and the secure chambers where careers and sometimes lives ended. "That's not actually your real name, is it? We're going to have a long conversation about that. About a lot of things. You're crazy. You're a crazy old woman." But her voice was shaking now, her eyes darting between the armed men. "Brian, do something." Brian was staring at me. I watched understanding dawn on his face, followed by confusion, followed by something that looked almost like wonder. "Mom?" he whispered. "Who are you?" I touched my split lip gently. The blood had dried, but the sting remained. "I'm someone who should have told you the truth a long time ago," I said. "And I'm someone who is very, very done being called useless." Samuel Torres gestured to two of his men. They moved toward Vanessa with handcuffs. "You can't do this," she screamed. "I have rights. I want a lawyer." "You'll get one," Samuel said calmly. "After we've finished processing you, the charges are extensive. I'd recommend cooperation." As they led her away, Vanessa twisted to look back at me. The hatred in her eyes was pure and undiluted. I had seen that look before, from terrorists and traitors and people who had tried to hurt my country. I had never seen it from someone who sat across from me at family dinners. "This isn't over," she spat. "I'll destroy you. I'll tell everyone what you did to me." I said nothing. I watched them put her in the back of an SUV, watched the door close, watched her face disappear behind tinted glass. Then I turned to my son. Brian was standing in the middle of the parking lot, looking lost and small, like the boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The boy I had read stories to, taught to ride a bike, sent off to college with homemade cookies and a promise to call every Sunday. The man who had watched his wife hit me and said nothing. "I don't understand," he said, "any of this. Mom, what's happening? Who are these people?" I walked over to him slowly. My bones ached. My lip throbbed. I was 67 years old and I was tired in ways that had nothing to do with age. "They're colleagues," I said, "from my other career. The one I never told you about." "What other career?" "You were a secretary at a government office. You filed papers. He stopped, staring at me like he was seeing a stranger. "You lied to me? My whole life? I protected you. There's a difference." I reached out to touch his face, and he flinched. That hurt more than Vanessa's slap. "Brian, I know this is overwhelming. I know you have questions, but right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "Trust you? Mom, I don't even know who you are." I let my hand fall. "No," I said quietly. "You don't. And that's my fault. But I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix everything." Samuel Torres appeared at my elbow. "Commander, we should move. The perimeter is secure, but we're attracting attention." I nodded. "Take us to the safe house. My son will need a room." "Not now, Brian. We'll talk later. Right now, you need to come with me, and you need to not ask questions." For a moment, I thought he might refuse. I thought he might demand answers, might insist on calling the police, might try to run to Vanessa's defense. He had been conditioned for years to defer to her, to believe her, to see her as the authority in his life. But something in his eyes shifted, something that looked almost like recognition. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay, I'll come." As we walked toward one of the SUVs, I glanced back at Margie's diner. Through the window, I could see the patrons still frozen, still staring. Margie herself had come out from behind the counter, mouth open, coffee pot forgotten. I had eaten apple pie at that counter thousands of times over the years. I had debriefed agents here, planned operations here, celebrated quiet victories that would never be acknowledged. Now I had been assaulted here, and now everyone in that diner knew that Ruth Harper, the quiet old woman who always ordered the turkey club and left a generous tip, was something more than she appeared. The SUV's door closed behind me. Samuel Torres gave a signal, and we were moving. I sat in the back seat, watching Arlington slide past the tinted windows. My son sat beside me, silent and shell-shocked. Somewhere behind us, in another vehicle, Vanessa was probably screaming threats and demanding lawyers. I had spent 43 years serving my country from the shadows. I had never asked for recognition, never wanted fame, never needed anyone to know what I had done. But I was done being invisible. I was done being underestimated. I was done letting a woman like Vanessa Collins, or whatever her real name was, make my son think I was useless. She had no idea who she had married into, but she was about to find out. The safe house was in McLean, a nondescript colonial on a tree-lined street that could have belonged to any upper-middle-class family. It didn't. It belonged to an agency that officially didn't use safe houses because it officially didn't conduct domestic operations. Brian hadn't spoken since we left the diner parking lot. He sat in an armchair in the living room, staring at the wall, processing something his mind wasn't built to handle. I knew that look. I had seen it on assets who discovered they had been manipulated, on analysts who realized the intelligence they trusted had been compromised, on good people who learned that the world was darker and more complex than they had ever imagined. "Coffee?" Samuel Torres asked, appearing in the doorway. My son didn't respond. "Give him time," Samuel said quietly, handing me a mug. "It's a lot to absorb." "I know." I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic. My lip had stopped bleeding, but it was swelling now, purpling at the edges. I had refused medical attention. The injury was minor, and I needed to focus. Samuel sat across from me, tablet in hand. "We have preliminary results on Vanessa Collins Harper, or rather, the woman using that identity." He handed me the tablet. On the screen was a photograph. Vanessa's face, younger, different hairstyle, but unmistakably her. Next to it was another photograph of a different woman, similar features, similar age. The real Vanessa Collins died in a car accident in Roanoke in 2014, Samuel explained. Single-car crash, vehicle fire. The body was badly burned. Identification was made through dental records and personal effects. Very. The woman currently using that identity was born Rebecca Ann Mercer in Wheeling, West Virginia. She has warrants in 3 states, West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Fraud, theft by deception, and in Pennsylvania there's an open investigation into the disappearance of a former boyfriend. I scrolled through the file. Rebecca Mercer had a pattern. She targeted men who were lonely, insecure, looking for someone to make them feel special. She married them, isolated them from family and friends, and systematically drained their assets. When she was done, she moved on, leaving financial ruin and emotional devastation in her wake. Confirmed? 4, including Brian. Suspected? At least 8. She changes identities frequently, moves to new states, adjusts her approach based on what she learns from each mark. Mark? The word hit me like a second slap. Brian wasn't a husband to this woman. He was a target, a mark, a resource to be exploited and discarded. The assets she took from her previous victims. Do we know where the money went? Working on that. She's careful. Uses shell companies, offshore accounts, cryptocurrency. But she's not as sophisticated as she thinks she is. We'll find it. I looked at the photograph of Rebecca Mercer again. 23 years old in the image, already with the calculating eyes of a predator. How many lives had she destroyed since then? How many families had she torn apart? What about the boyfriend in Pennsylvania? The one who disappeared? Samuel's expression darkened. Daniel Vance, 42 years old, divorced, owned a small construction company. He started dating Rebecca in 2018. Within a year, he had transferred his business to her name, maxed out multiple credit cards, and taken a second mortgage on his home. When he discovered she was funneling money to accounts he couldn't access, he confronted her. He told his sister he was going to report her to the police. That was in March 2019. No one has seen him since. I set the tablet down carefully. You think she killed him? I think he was an obstacle, and she removed him. Whether she did it herself or had help, we don't know yet. But the Pennsylvania investigators have always suspected foul play. They just couldn't prove it. From across the room, Brian spoke for the first time. You're saying Vanessa murdered someone? We both turned. He was still staring at the wall, but his hands were shaking. We're saying it's possible, Samuel said carefully. The investigation is ongoing. The investigation. Brian laughed, but there was no humor in it. She's been sleeping next to me for 3 years. She's been eating dinner at my table, meeting my friends, telling me she loved me. And you're telling me she might be a murderer? Don't! He finally looked at me, and the pain in his eyes was raw and terrible. Don't try to comfort me, Mom. Not when you've been lying to me my entire life. I wasn't lying. I was protecting you. From what? From knowing that my mother was some kind of spy? That she had secret agents on speed dial? That she could have a woman arrested by snapping her fingers? He stood up abruptly, pacing. All those years, all those boring stories about filing paperwork and attending government meetings. All those times I thought you were just a secretary. You must have thought I was an idiot." "I never thought that. Not for 1 second." "Then why didn't you tell me?" I set my coffee down and met his eyes. "Because knowledge is dangerous, Brian. The work I did, the work Samuel and his team still do, it creates enemies. Powerful enemies. People who would hurt anyone connected to us, including family members. The less you knew, the safer you were. Safe." He laughed again, bitter and broken. "You know what's ironic? While you were keeping me safe from your work enemies, you handed me directly to an actual criminal. A woman who's been abusing me for years. A woman who might have killed someone." The words landed like blows, each one true. I had been so focused on protecting Brian from the dangers of my professional world that I had completely missed the danger in his personal one. "You're right," I said quietly. "I failed you." Brian stopped pacing. Whatever response he had expected, it wasn't that. I was so careful about certain kinds of threats that I missed others entirely. I knew something was wrong. I saw the signs. The isolation. The way you flinched when Vanessa raised her voice. The excuses you made for her behavior. But I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. I told myself you were an adult who could make his own decisions. Now I know better. Now I have access to resources I should have used years ago. I picked up the tablet again. "Samuel, show me the financial records." Samuel navigated to another screen. "Here." We traced the accounts Brian and Vanessa hold jointly. Over the past 3 years, approximately $340,000 has been transferred from those accounts to a series of shell companies. Brian went pale. That's almost everything we had. The savings, the investments, everything from Dad's life insurance, it's gone," Samuel confirmed. "Moved through multiple jurisdictions, but we can trace it, and we can potentially recover a significant portion." "There's more," I said, studying the records. "Look at this transaction from 6 months ago. A wire transfer to an escrow account for a property purchase in the Cayman Islands. She was planning to run," Brian said slowly. "She was taking everything and planning to run." "Eventually, yes, but not yet. According to this timeline, she was still in the accumulation phase. She wanted more." Samuel pulled up another document. "We found a life insurance policy taken out 14 months ago. $2 million, with Brian as the primary insured and Vanessa as the sole beneficiary." The room went silent. Brian sat down heavily, all the color draining from his face. "She was going to kill me." "We don't know that for certain," Samuel said, but his tone suggested he believed exactly that. "She was going to kill me and take the money and disappear." Brian looked at me with something that might have been gratitude, or might have been horror. "If you hadn't called your people tonight, if she had gotten away, she didn't get away. That's what matters now." I stood and walked to where my son sat. I wanted to touch him, to comfort him, but I didn't know if he would welcome it. I didn't know if he could bear to be touched by anyone right now. "Brian, I know this is overwhelming. I know you're processing betrayals on multiple fronts, but I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." He looked up at me, waiting. "Did you know any of it? Did she tell you about her past? About the other men? About the money?" "No." His voice cracked. "God, no. I thought she loved me. I thought the way she acted was just, I don't know. I thought I deserved it somehow. She always said I wasn't good enough, that I didn't appreciate her, that I was lucky she stayed with me. That's what abusers do. They make you feel like the abuse is your fault. But I should have known. I should have seen. Should you? You're not trained for this. You're not a spy or an investigator. You're a software engineer who trusted the woman he married." I finally reached out and put my hand on his shoulder. He didn't flinch. "She targeted you, Brian. She studied you, figured out exactly what you needed to hear, and she used that against you. The failure isn't yours, it's mine, for not protecting you from her." Samuel's phone buzzed. He checked it, then looked up. Preliminary interrogation results. "Vanessa, Rebecca, is demanding a lawyer and refusing to answer questions. But we've confirmed her real identity through fingerprints. She's definitely Rebecca Mercer. Has she asked about Brian? Once. Asked if he was safe and if she could speak to him." Samuel's expression hardened. The phrasing suggested she wanted to make sure her investment was still intact. Brian made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I straightened up. I want to see the interview room footage, and I want the full file on Daniel Vance, the missing boyfriend. If she killed him, we're going to prove it. Mom, Brian grabbed my wrist. What happens now? To her? To me? To us? I looked at my son. Really looked at him. Seeing the damage that 3 years of psychological abuse had carved into his face. The way he hunched his shoulders, made himself smaller. The way his eyes kept darting to the door, as if expecting Vanessa to walk in at any moment. It would take years to undo what she had done to him. Therapy, support, patience, time. But at least he would have years. Daniel Vance hadn't been so lucky. What happens now, I said, is that we build a case. Not just for the assault tonight, but for everything. The fraud, the identity theft, the missing boyfriend. We tear apart her entire operation and make sure she never hurts anyone again. I sat down beside him. That's up to you. I know you're angry. I know you feel betrayed. By her and by me. You have every right to walk out of here and never speak to me again. Is that what you want? What I want is to know my son again. The real you. Not the version Vanessa created. I want to tell you about my life. My real life. And hear about yours. I want to have the relationship we should have had, without secrets or lies. I paused. But only if you want that too. Brian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, the man who came to the diner. The one who tried to help when Vanessa hit you. He called you commander. Commander of what? I looked at Samuel, who nodded slightly. Some things could be shared now. I was the director of special operations for the NSA for 12 years. Before that, I ran counterintelligence operations across 4 continents. I've briefed presidents, authorized missions, and made decisions that shaped history in ways that will never be publicly acknowledged. Brian stared at me like I had grown a second head. Your father knew, I continued. He was CIA, which is how we met. We decided together to keep you out of that world. We wanted you to have a normal life, a safe life. I smiled sadly. We succeeded too well. We made you so normal, so trusting, that you couldn't recognize a predator when she was sleeping in your bed. He was. A good man and a better agent. He loved you more than anything in the world. I touched the wedding ring I still wore. He would have been horrified by what Vanessa did to you, and he would have been proud that you're strong enough to survive it. Brian looked at his hands, processing. Then slowly, he nodded. Okay, I want to know. All of it. Who you really are, what you really did, everything. He looked up at me, and for the first time since the diner, I saw something other than confusion and pain in his eyes. I saw determination, and I want to help. I don't know yet, but she used me. She made me complicit in her schemes without me even knowing it. I want to help take her down. I studied my son's face. He wasn't trained for this kind of work. He didn't have the skills or the stomach for what might be required, but he had something else. A need for justice, for closure, for proof that he wasn't just a victim. We'll see, I said. For now, you need to rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. Samuel escorted Brian to a bedroom upstairs. I stayed in the living room, surrounded by files and tablets and the accumulated evidence of Rebecca Mercer's crimes. One of those files caught my eye, a photograph of Daniel Vance, the missing boyfriend. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. A man who had trusted the wrong woman, just like my son. I was going to find out what happened to him, and if Rebecca Mercer had killed him, I was going to make sure she paid for it. The clock on the wall read 3:47 a.m. In a few hours, the sun would rise on a new day. A day of interrogations and evidence gathering and difficult conversations. But for now, in the quiet of the safe house, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not for reconciliation. That would come slowly, if it came at all. But hope that the truth, finally exposed, might set us both free. The security footage arrived at 7 in the morning. Samuel had pulled every camera feed from Brian and Vanessa's home. The smart doorbell, the baby monitor they had never used for a baby, the motion-activated cameras in the garage. I sat in the safe house kitchen, laptop open, coffee growing cold beside me. Brian was still asleep upstairs, which was probably for the best. What I was about to watch wasn't meant for him. The first clip was from 3 months ago, time-stamped 11:47 p.m. The camera was in the living room, a small unit disguised as a picture frame. Vanessa had probably installed it to monitor Brian, not realizing that we could access the feed remotely. On the screen, Brian sat on the couch, shoulders hunched, hands clasped between his knees. Vanessa stood over him, her face contorted with rage. "You told your sister about the credit card debt? Are you fucking stupid?" She asked how we were doing. I didn't think. That's right. You didn't think. You never think. That's why I have to do everything in this marriage. That's why I have to control every aspect of our finances, our social life, our everything. Because you are incapable of functioning like an adult. I'm sorry. I'll tell her I exaggerated. I'll fix it. You'll fix it. Vanessa laughed, sharp and cruel. Like you fixed it when you told your mother we were having problems? Like you fixed it when you tried to open a savings account without telling me? She hit him. An open palm slap across the face, hard enough to snap his head to the side. Brian didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't raise his hands to defend himself. He just sat there, accepting the blow like it was something he deserved. I paused the video. My hands were trembling. For 3 years, my son had lived like this. For 3 years, he had been hit, degraded, controlled, while I sat at family dinners making polite conversation with his abuser. I had noticed the signs, the nervousness, the weight loss, the way he always deferred to Vanessa, but I had told myself it wasn't my business. I had failed him, completely and utterly. Samuel appeared in the doorway. There's more, a lot more. For the next 2 hours, I watched my son's marriage through the lens of hidden cameras. I watched Vanessa berate him for leaving dishes in the sink, for speaking to his coworkers, for calling me on Mother's Day. I watched her hit him, throw things at him, lock him out of their bedroom when he didn't perform some task to her satisfaction. And I watched the moment when Brian finally broke. It was from 6 months ago, late at night, both of them in bed. Vanessa was scrolling through her phone, ignoring Brian completely. "I think we should see someone," Brian said quietly. "A counselor. To work on our communication." Vanessa didn't look up. "You think we need help because you can't handle a strong woman. I married you because I thought you had potential. I gave up my career to support yours. And this is how you repay me? By suggesting I'm the problem? I didn't say you were the problem. I said we should work on—" She turned to him then. And even through the grainy footage, I could see the coldness in her eyes. "If you ever suggest therapy again, I will tell everyone we know that you hit me. I will file a police report. I will destroy your career, your reputation, everything you care about." Brian went white. "Vanessa, I would never— I know, but no one else does. It would be your word against mine. The devoted wife with bruises she gave herself, versus the man who everyone knows has anger issues. I don't have anger issues. You do now." She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had just won a game their opponent didn't know they were playing. "That's what I'll tell people. That's what I'll tell your mother, your sister, your boss, that you're violent and controlling, and I'm terrified of you." I stopped the video. I couldn't watch anymore. Samuel was standing by the window, his face carefully neutral. He had seen worse in his career. We both had. But this was personal. This was my son. "The Pennsylvania investigators are sending us everything they have on Daniel Vance," he said. "But I think we already know what happened." She threatened him the same way she threatened Brian. And when that didn't work, she escalated. That's our theory. Vance had a sister who was pushing him to leave Rebecca. The sister was vocal, persistent, suspicious. If Vance had listened to her, Rebecca would have been exposed. So she removed him permanently. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the quiet suburban street was waking up. Joggers, dog walkers, children waiting for school buses. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that in a nondescript house on their street, a former intelligence director was unraveling a predator's crimes. "There's something else," Samuel said. "We've been monitoring the holding facility where Rebecca is being detained. She made a phone call this morning. To someone else, a woman named Denise Park. We traced the number to a burner phone, but we managed to get voice analysis on the conversation." He handed me a transcript. "Rebecca, it's me. I'm in trouble. Denise, I heard. What do you need?" Rebecca, Clean up. The husband has recordings, the mother has connections. This could unravel everything. Denise. The Pennsylvania situation? Rebecca. Everything. Chicago, Tampa, all of it. Denise. I'll make some calls. Rebecca. There's a laptop in the garage, hidden in the false bottom of the tool chest. It has files, financial records, communications, things that can't be linked to the legitimate accounts. Get it before they do. Denise. Consider it done. Rebecca. And Denise, the mother. Ruth Harper. She's not what she seems. I ran her name through my contact at the DMV after the arrest. Her address is flagged in some federal database. I don't know what it means, but be careful. I looked up from the transcript. She knows something about me. She suspects. Her DMV contact ran your license plate and got a system flag. It doesn't reveal anything specific, but it tells her you're not an ordinary retiree. And this Denise Park? Who is she? That's what's interesting. Samuel pulled up a photograph on his tablet. Denise Park was Rebecca Mercer's college roommate. They've stayed in contact over the years. We believe she's been providing logistical support for Rebecca's operations, helping with identity documents, managing offshore accounts, possibly disposing of evidence. Unknown, but she's on her way to Brian and Rebecca's house right now, looking for that laptop. I felt something shift inside me, the old instincts waking up. The operational mind that had planned dozens of missions starting to analyze angles and opportunities. Let her find it, I said. Samuel raised an eyebrow. Commander, let her go to the house, retrieve the laptop, and leave. Then follow her. She'll lead us to the rest of the network. The contacts, the offshore accounts, whoever helped Rebecca disappear Daniel Vance. And if she destroys the laptop before we can recover it. She won't destroy it. The laptop has value. Financial records, blackmail material, communication logs. Denise will keep it as insurance, or she'll try to sell it. I turned from the window. But we should have someone inside the house before she gets there, hidden, recording everything. Samuel nodded slowly. I'll send Thompson and Martinez. They can be in position within the hour. Good. And Samuel? I want a full background on Denise Park. Everything. Where she lives, where she works, who she talks to. If she's been helping Rebecca for years, she knows where the bodies are buried. Possibly literally. Yes, possibly literally. The sound of footsteps on the stairs announced Brian's arrival. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, rumpled and exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. I heard voices, he said. What's happening? I glanced at Samuel, who gave a small nod. We had agreed last night that Brian would be included in the investigation to the extent possible. It was his life that had been destroyed, after all. We've been reviewing evidence, I said. Security footage from your house. And we've identified someone in Rebecca's network. A woman named Denise Park. I don't know that name. You wouldn't. She operates in the background, providing support. She's on her way to your house right now to retrieve a laptop hidden in the garage. Brian's face cycled through confusion, understanding, and then anger. She's still running her operation. Even from jail, that's how these networks work. They're designed to function even if one member is compromised. I poured him a cup of coffee. But her continued activity is actually helpful. It means she's exposing more of the network, giving us more threads to follow. Right now? Nothing. Later, we may need your help to access accounts or identify communications. But for now, the best thing you can do is rest and prepare. I showed him the transcript of Rebecca's phone call. I watched his face as he read it, watched the color drain away and then return in angry patches. She was going to frame me, he said. If I ever tried to leave, she was going to tell everyone I was the abuser. And that woman, Denise, she's going to help her destroy evidence. Evidence of what? The missing boyfriend? The money she stole? What else is on that laptop? That's what we're going to find out. Brian set the transcript down carefully, precisely. Then he looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Cold, focused, determined. I want her to pay, he said. Not just prison. I want her to lose everything, the way she made me lose everything. I want her to know what it feels like to have her entire life dismantled by someone she trusted. I know, revenge isn't healthy. I'll deal with that in therapy. But right now, In this moment, I want her to suffer. I understood that feeling. I had felt it many times over my career. The burning need to see justice done, to watch those who hurt others face consequences. It was a dangerous feeling, one that could lead to mistakes and compromises and moral failures. But it was also a powerful motivator, and properly channeled, it could be useful. Then help us build the case, I said. Everything you know about her, habits, preferences, things she said that didn't make sense at the time. Every detail matters. Brian nodded. Where do I start? Samuel handed him a tablet and stylus. Write down everything. Don't edit yourself. Don't worry about what seems important. Just write. As Brian settled at the kitchen table and began documenting his marriage, I stepped out onto the back porch. The morning air was cool and clean, carrying the distant sound of traffic and birdsong. My phone buzzed. A message from Thompson. In position. Park just arrived. Beginning surveillance. I thought about Rebecca Mercer, the girl from West Virginia who had reinvented herself as a predator. How many lives had she destroyed? How many men had she manipulated, used, discarded? How many families had she torn apart? And how many more would she have destroyed if I hadn't pressed that button on my watch? The question haunted me. If I had acted sooner, if I had used my resources years ago to investigate Brian's wife, none of this would have happened. Daniel Vance might still be alive. My son might have been saved years of abuse, but I hadn't acted. I had played by the rules, respected boundaries, trusted that my adult son could handle his own life. I would never make that mistake again. My phone buzzed again. Thompson. Park has retrieved the laptop. She's on the move. I typed back, follow her, do not intercept. Let her lead us to the others. The response came quickly. Understood, Commander. Commander. I hadn't been called that in 8 years. I had thought that part of my life was over, that Ruth Harper, the intelligence director, had retired permanently, leaving only Ruth Harper, the grandmother, behind. Some identities never fully disappear. They just wait in the shadows, ready to emerge when they're needed most. And right now, with my son's life in ruins and a predator's network still operating, Commander Harper was very much needed. I went back inside to coordinate the operation. The conference call had been running for 3 hours. On the screen in front of me, 4 faces were arranged in a grid. Assistant U.S. Attorney Margaret Chen, FBI Special Agent Williams, Pennsylvania State Police Detective Morrison, and a woman from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, whose name I had already forgotten. Commander Harper, Margaret Chen said, shuffling papers. I have to be honest with you. The evidence you've compiled is impressive, but there are significant jurisdictional complications. Rebecca Mercer has committed crimes in at least 4 states. We have fraud in Virginia, identity theft in West Virginia, suspected murder in Pennsylvania, and now assault in Virginia again. Each jurisdiction has its own prosecutors, its own priorities, its own case timelines, so coordinate them. Chen smiled thinly. It's not that simple. Pennsylvania has been investigating Daniel Vance's disappearance for 5 years. They're not going to hand their case over to federal prosecutors just because we ask nicely. Detective Morrison cleared his throat. With respect, Commander, we've been working this case long before your involvement. Daniel Vance's sister has been calling my office every month for 5 years, asking when we're going to arrest someone. I'm not going to tell her that her brother's case is being folded into a larger federal prosecution that might take another 3 years to resolve. I understood his frustration. I had felt it many times myself, the bureaucratic machinery of justice grinding slowly while victims waited and perpetrators planned their escapes. What if I told you I could give you Rebecca Mercer for murder within the week? The screen went quiet. Even the FinCEN woman looked up from her notes. How? Morrison asked. Denise Park, Rebecca's accomplice. My team has been following her since she retrieved the laptop from Brian's house. She's made several interesting stops, a storage unit in Fairfax, a safety deposit box in Baltimore, and yesterday, a cabin in the mountains of West Virginia. The cabin, Chen said slowly. You think that's where... I think that's where they disposed of Daniel Vance's body, yes. The property records show it was purchased by a shell company 3 months before Vance disappeared. The same shell company that received $200,000 from his construction business. Morrison leaned forward. If we find remains at that cabin, then you have your murder case, and Pennsylvania can prosecute Rebecca Mercer for capital murder while the rest of us build the federal fraud and racketeering charges. The meeting continued for another hour, hammering out details and protocols. By the time we disconnected, we had a plan. Search warrants for the cabin, arrest warrants for Denise Park, and a coordinated timeline that would see Rebecca Mercer facing charges in 3 jurisdictions within 30 days. I closed the laptop and rubbed my eyes. The safe house was quiet. Brian was in his room, still processing everything he had learned. Samuel was coordinating with the surveillance team following Denise Park. My phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number. "I know who you are. I know where your son is. Back off or he dies." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet suburban street. Denise Park had made a mistake. She thought she could threaten me into backing down. She didn't understand that threats only made me more determined. Samuel appeared in the doorway. "Commander? Problem?" I showed him the phone. His expression hardened. "We need to move Brian to a more secure location. We need to accelerate the timeline. If we move Brian, Denise will know we're spooked. She'll destroy evidence, warn Rebecca, possibly disappear entirely. We can't give her that advantage." "And if she makes good on the threat?" I turned from the window. "Then she'll discover that threatening my family is the worst mistake she's ever made." Samuel nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Double the security detail on Brian. I want eyes on every approach to this house, and I want Denise Park's location confirmed within the hour." "Already done. She's at a hotel in Richmond. Been there since last night." "Good. She's waiting, probably trying to figure out how serious we are." I picked up my phone again. "Let's show her." I dialed a number I hadn't used in 8 years. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Ruth Harper. I wondered when you'd call." "Director Morrison. I need a favor." "You always did. What is it this time?" "I need the full weight of the agency on a domestic case. Financial crimes, suspected murder, ongoing criminal conspiracy." "That's not really our mandate anymore, Ruth. The restructuring—" "I know about the restructuring. I also know that Rebecca Mercer has connections to 3 foreign nationals who have been flagged in your databases. She's been moving money through accounts in Cyprus, the Caymans, and Singapore. That makes this an international case." Silence on the other end. Then, "How do you know about the foreign connections?" "Because I've been doing this for 43 years, and I still know how to read a financial trail." I paused. "I'm not asking you to run the investigation. I'm asking you to provide resources, surveillance assets, financial analysts, maybe a tactical team if things go sideways. In return, you get credit for helping to dismantle a multi-state fraud ring with international connections. Good press, good metrics, good for your budget request next year?" Morrison laughed. "You always knew how to sell a deal." "Fine, I'll assign a liaison team. They'll report to you, but officially they're working a separate investigation that happens to intersect with yours. That's all I need, thank you. Ruth, be careful. You're not in the field anymore. Don't let this become personal." It became personal when she hit me in that diner. But I appreciate the concern. I hung up and turned to Samuel. "We have backup. Now let's talk about the cabin." For the next 2 hours, we reviewed satellite imagery, property records, and geological surveys. The cabin was isolated. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles away, and the only road in was a dirt track that would be impassable in bad weather. Perfect for disposing of a body. "If Vance is there," Samuel said, "he's been there for 5 years. The remains will be skeletal, possibly scattered by animals. It's going to be a careful excavation. Then we do it carefully. But we do it soon, before Denise has a chance to move anything." "You think she will?" "I think she's planning something. The threat she sent wasn't just intimidation. It was a distraction. She wants us focused on protecting Brian while she cleans up loose ends." Samuel's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression shifted. "Denise Park just checked out of her hotel. She's heading north." I stood up. "Then we move now. Get the Pennsylvania team on the line. Tell them we're executing the search warrant tonight, not tomorrow." "Commander, the warrant isn't signed yet. Then get a judge on the phone. Wake them up if you have to. I am not letting Denise Park destroy evidence of a murder Because we waited for paperwork. Samuel hesitated for only a moment. Then he nodded and reached for his phone. I walked upstairs to Brian's room. He was sitting on the bed, staring at his tablet, but he looked up when I knocked on the open door. "Mom, what's happening?" "We're moving faster than planned. The woman who's been helping Rebecca, Denise Park, is on the move. We think she's going to try to destroy evidence. Of the boyfriend, the one who disappeared in Pennsylvania." Brian's face went pale. "You think He set the tablet down carefully. "What do you need me to do?" "Stay here. The security team will be increased. Don't leave the house. Don't answer the door. Don't communicate with anyone except Samuel or me." "I mean it, Brian. These people are dangerous. Rebecca threatened to frame you for abuse. Denise has threatened to kill you. They're not going to stop until they're in custody." "Then let me help. I can't just sit here while you can, and you will." I crossed to where he sat and put my hands on his shoulders. "I spent 43 years protecting this country. Let me spend one night protecting my son." Brian looked at me, really looked at me, the way he used to when he was a child asking questions I couldn't answer. But this time, something had changed. He wasn't looking at a stranger anymore. He was looking at his mother, finally seeing her clearly. "Okay," he said quietly. "Be careful." I left him there and went back downstairs. Samuel had the team assembled, 8 operatives, fully equipped, ready to move. "The judge signed the warrant," he reported. "Pennsylvania team is en route to the cabin, ETA 2 hours. Still heading north. If she maintains her current speed, she'll reach the cabin around midnight." I checked my watch. 8:47 p.m. We had time, but not much. "Let's go," I said. "We have a murder to solve." As we loaded into the SUVs, I thought about Daniel Vance, a man I had never met, whose only crime was trusting the wrong woman. His sister had been fighting for 5 years to find answers. Tonight, she might finally get them, and Rebecca Mercer would finally face justice for all of her crimes. The convoy pulled out of the safe house, heading toward the mountains of West Virginia. Behind us, the security team took up positions around Brian's location. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the blocked number. "Last warning. Back off now." I typed a reply. "No." Then I turned off the phone and focused on the road ahead. Some battles couldn't be avoided. Some enemies had to be confronted directly. I had learned that in 43 years of intelligence work, and I was about to apply that lesson to the most personal mission of my career. Denise Park thought she could threaten my family and walk away. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The cabin sat in a clearing at the end of a winding dirt road, surrounded by pines that blocked most of the moonlight. It looked abandoned, windows dark, porch sagging, weeds growing through the cracks in the foundation, but appearances were deceiving. I had learned that lesson many times. "Thermal imaging shows one heat signature inside," Samuel reported, checking his tablet. "Ground floor, northwest corner. Most likely, she arrived about 20 minutes ago. Her car is parked behind the structure." I studied the cabin through my binoculars. The Pennsylvania State Police team was positioned at the tree line, waiting for our signal. FBI agents covered the only road out. We had 18 operatives in total, surrounding a single woman in a decrepit cabin. It felt like overkill, but Denise Park had helped dispose of at least one body. She had threatened my son. I wasn't taking any chances. "Any sign of weapons?" I asked. "Unknown. We haven't seen her leave the vehicle with anything, but she could have supplies cached inside. Assume she's armed. Proceed with caution." Samuel relayed the orders. I watched the operatives move into position, shadows flowing through shadows, invisible to anyone not trained to see them. My phone vibrated. A call from Detective Morrison in Pennsylvania. "Commander Harper, my team is in position. We're ready to breach on your command. Hold for my signal. I want to give her a chance to surrender peacefully." "With respect, ma'am, this woman may have helped murder Daniel Vance. She doesn't deserve peaceful." "She deserves due process. That's what separates us from the criminals." I paused. "But if she doesn't cooperate, you have my full authorization to use whatever force is necessary." I lowered the binoculars and turned to Samuel. "Give me a megaphone." "She's going to see us coming no matter what we do. Might as well announce ourselves properly." Samuel handed me the device reluctantly. I walked to the edge of the tree line, close enough to be seen if anyone inside was watching. Denise Park. My voice echoed across the clearing, amplified and distorted. This is Ruth Harper. The cabin is surrounded by federal agents and state police. You have 90 seconds to exit through the front door with your hands visible. If you do not comply, we will enter by force. Silence. The cabin remained dark and still. I counted the seconds in my head. 60, 70, 80. At 85, the front door opened. Denise Park stepped onto the porch, hands raised. She was younger than I expected. Mid-30s with short dark hair and a face that might have been pretty if it weren't twisted with hatred. "Ruth Harper," she called out. "The famous commander. Rebecca told me about you." "I'm sure she did." "Keep your hands where I can see them and walk toward the vehicles." Denise didn't move. "You think you've won, don't you? You think arresting me and Rebecca will fix everything. But you don't understand what you're dealing with. We're not alone. There are others like us. Women who learned how to take what they deserve from men who never appreciated them. A network. An organization. You can lock us up, but you can't stop what we've started." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "How many?" "More than you'd believe. Across the country, across the world. Women who are tired of being victims, who decided to become predators instead." Denise smiled. "Rebecca was one of the best, but she wasn't the only one. And she won't be the last. Then we'll find them too. All of them. Maybe, maybe not." Denise's hands were still raised, but her posture had changed. Less surrender, more defiance. "But you should know something before you take me in. Something about your precious son." I forced my voice to remain steady. "What about him?" "Rebecca was planning to kill him. Next month. She had the whole thing arranged. A tragic accident, a grieving widow, a $2 million payout. But that wasn't the interesting part." "What was the interesting part?" Denise's smile widened. "The interesting part is that Brian knew. Deep down, in the part of his mind he tried to ignore. He knew what she was. He knew what she was planning. And he stayed anyway, because he thought he deserved it." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I didn't let it show on my face. 43 years of intelligence work had taught me to compartmentalize, to process information later, to never let an adversary see weakness. "Denise Park, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and accessory after the fact. You have the right to remain silent." "I'm not finished." Denise took a step forward. "You want to know where Daniel Vance is? He's under the cabin, right under our feet. Rebecca buried him there herself, and I watched. He begged, you know. Begged her to let him go, said he'd never tell anyone. But Rebecca doesn't leave loose ends." Detective Morrison's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Commander, we need to get excavation teams out here now." "I know. Just give me a minute." I walked across the clearing toward Denise, stopping 10 feet away. Close enough to see her eyes, to read her expression. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "What do you gain?" "Nothing. Everything." Denise shrugged. "I'm going to prison regardless. Rebecca is going to prison. The network will continue without us. But I wanted you to know that you haven't won anything. You've just scratched the surface of something much bigger than one abusive wife and one missing boyfriend. Then help us scratch deeper. Give us names, locations, methods. Why would I do that? Because it's the right thing to do. Because those women are hurting innocent people. Because somewhere inside you, there's still a conscience that knows the difference between justice and cruelty." Denise laughed. "You really believe that, don't you? That people can change? That there's good in everyone?" She shook her head. "Rebecca was right about you. You're soft. All that intelligence experience, all those years in the shadows, and you still believe in redemption. I believe in accountability. I believe that people who hurt others should face consequences. And I believe that even the worst people can choose to make things right. Then you're a fool. Maybe. But I'm a fool with a warrant and 18 armed operatives." I stepped back and gestured to the waiting agents. "Take her into custody. Carefully." 2 FBI agents moved forward, cuffing Denise's hands behind her back. She didn't resist, but she kept her eyes on me the entire time. "This isn't over, Commander," she said as they led her away. "Rebecca has friends. Important friends. People who won't appreciate you interfering with their investments. Let them come. I've faced worse." Once Denise was secured in a vehicle, I turned my attention to the cabin. Detective Morrison and his team were already setting up equipment for the excavation. "How long?" I asked. "Hard to say. If she's telling the truth about the burial location, we could find remains within hours. If she's lying, it could take days." "She's not lying. She wanted us to find him. It's her final act of defiance, making sure we see what they did." Morrison nodded grimly. "I've called Daniel Vance's sister. She's driving up from Pittsburgh. Should be here by morning." "Good. She deserves to be here when we find him." I stepped away from the cabin and walked to the edge of the clearing. The mountains stretched out before me, dark shapes against a darker sky. Somewhere out there, other women like Rebecca and Denise were planning their next schemes, targeting their next victims. A network, an organization. I had thought this was about saving my son from one predatory woman. Now I realized it was much bigger than that. My phone buzzed. A text from Brian. "Mom, are you okay? Saw the news. They're saying FBI raid in West Virginia." I typed back, "I'm fine. We'll explain everything when I get back. Try to sleep." His reply came quickly. "Can't sleep. Keep thinking about what Vanessa, Rebecca, said in those videos, about how I deserved it." Did I deserve it, Mom? My heart clenched. I stepped further away from the activity around the cabin and called him. "Mom?" His voice was thick, like he'd been crying. "I keep watching those recordings. The things she said to me. The things she made me believe. And I can't figure out, was any of it real? Did she ever actually care about me?" "No," I said, more gently than the word deserved. "She didn't. She targeted you, manipulated you, used you. Nothing about your relationship was real." Then why do I still miss her? Why do I feel like part of me wants her back, even knowing what she is? Because that's what abusers do. They create dependency. They make you believe you can't survive without them. I paused. "It's not weakness, Brian. It's trauma, and it will take time to heal." "Will it? Heal, I mean?" "Yes, I promise. But you have to let yourself grieve first. Grieve the relationship you thought you had, the future you thought you were building. Let yourself be angry and sad and confused. And then, slowly, let yourself move forward. Silence on the other end. Then, Mom, I'm glad you pressed that button. On your watch. I'm glad you called your people, and I'm glad you're my mother. Even if I didn't know who you really were. I'm glad you're you." I closed my eyes against the sudden sting of tears. "Thank you, Brian. That means more than you know. Come home safe, okay? We have a lot of talking to do." "I will. I promise." I hung up and stood in the darkness, letting the mountain air cool my face. Behind me, I could hear the excavation beginning. The careful removal of floorboards, the scrape of shovels, the methodical work of uncovering a grave. Daniel Vance had been dead for 5 years. His sister had never stopped looking for him. Rebecca Mercer had killed him and moved on to her next victim, my son. And somewhere out there, a network of women like Rebecca was still operating, still targeting vulnerable men, still destroying lives. I had one case to finish here, but when it was done, I would have work to do. The first shovelful of dirt came up from beneath the cabin. The search for Daniel Vance's remains had begun, and my search for the network that created Rebecca Mercer was just starting. 6 months later, I stood in a federal courtroom and watched Rebecca Mercer receive her sentence. Life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Daniel Vance. 40 years for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Additional sentences pending in 3 other states. She would die behind bars. It was more mercy than she had shown her victims. Rebecca's face was blank as the judge read the verdict. She didn't look at me. Didn't look at Brian. Didn't look at the Vance family seated in the gallery. She stared straight ahead, as if she had already retreated to some place inside herself where none of this mattered. I wondered if she felt anything at all. Denise Park had received a similar sentence 2 months earlier. She had refused to cooperate, refused to name other members of the network, refused to show any remorse for her role in Daniel Vance's death. In her final statement to the court, she had promised that others would continue the work. We were still searching for them. After the sentencing, I stepped out of the courthouse into the spring sunshine. Brian was waiting on the steps, looking healthier than he had in years. Therapy had helped. Distance from Rebecca had helped more. "It's over," he said. "This part is. The network is still out there. I know, but for us, for our family, it's over." I looked at my son, seeing the man he was becoming instead of the shell Rebecca had created. He had started a new job, made new friends, begun to rebuild the life she had systematically destroyed. He still had nightmares sometimes. He still flinched at unexpected touches, but he was healing. "I'm proud of you," I said, "for surviving, for testifying, for everything. I couldn't have done it without you." He paused. "I keep thinking about what Denise said, that I knew what Rebecca was deep down, that I stayed because I thought I deserved it. That wasn't your fault. She manipulated you. I know, but I also know that I didn't want to see the truth. It was easier to believe I was the problem than to accept that the person I loved was a monster." He shook his head. "I won't make that mistake again." "You won't. Because now you know what to look for." We walked to the car together, passing reporters and photographers who had been covering the trial. They called out questions about the network, about my career, about whether more arrests were coming, but I didn't answer. Some things weren't for public consumption. In the car, I checked my phone. A message from Samuel. "Lead on possible network member in Texas. Sending file." 6 months of investigation had yielded 8 additional arrests across 5 states. Women who had operated like Rebecca, targeting vulnerable men, draining their assets, sometimes worse. Each arrest led to more names, more connections, more threads to follow. The network was bigger than we had imagined, not a formal organization with hierarchy and rules, but a loose affiliation of predators who shared techniques and sometimes victims. They had operated in the shadows for years, protected by the simple fact that no one wanted to believe women could be abusers. We were changing that narrative, one arrest at a time. "Mom?" Brian was watching me. "You're not going to stop, are you? Even now that Rebecca is sentenced. There are more victims out there. More families being destroyed. I can't ignore that. I didn't think you could." He smiled, a real smile, the first I had seen in months. "Just promise me you'll take breaks sometimes. Visit your grandson. Remember that you're allowed to be retired." I dropped Brian at his apartment and drove to the safe house. It had become my unofficial headquarters over the past 6 months, a place where I could coordinate with Samuel and the team without attracting attention. The living room was covered in files and photographs, a wall dedicated to mapping the network's connections. 12 confirmed members so far, with another 15 under investigation. Most were women in their 30s and 40s, educated, attractive, skilled at manipulation. They had targeted men across the socioeconomic spectrum, from construction workers to hedge fund managers. Samuel was waiting with coffee and updates. "The Texas lead looks solid," he said. Sandra Chen, 42, currently married to her 3rd husband in Austin. Previous 2 husbands both died under suspicious circumstances, one in a car accident, one from an apparent suicide. Life insurance payouts, $1.5 million combined, and there's more. Her maiden name was Sandra Park. I looked up sharply. "Park? As in?" "Denise Park's cousin. They grew up together in West Virginia." The connections kept spreading, like roots from a poisoned tree. Every time we thought we had mapped the network, we found new branches. "What's our approach?" "Local FBI is prepared to take point, but they want your guidance. Sandra Chen is careful. No digital footprint, no obvious financial irregularities. If we're going to build a case, we need someone close to her." Her current husband, Michael Chen, is starting to have doubts. His sister contacted local authorities 3 months ago, concerned about changes in his behavior. Classic isolation patterns. He's cut off from friends and family, given Sandra control of their finances, become withdrawn and anxious. I thought about Brian, about the years I had watched him fade without understanding why. about all the warning signs I had ignored because I didn't want to believe my son's wife could be hurting him. We need to reach Michael Chen, directly, before Sandra escalates. That's risky. If she realizes we're investigating, then we lose the element of surprise. I know, but we also might save a man's life. I set down my coffee. Send me the file. Everything we have on Sandra Chen and her husband. I want to know their routines, their relationships, their pressure points. Samuel nodded and handed me a tablet. I began reading, losing myself in the familiar work of analysis and planning. 3 hours later, I had a strategy. 2 days later, I was on a plane to Texas. Michael Chen worked at a software company downtown. I arranged to accidentally encounter him at a coffee shop near his office. The kind of casual meeting that could be a coincidence or could be something more. He was thin, nervous, with dark circles under his eyes. He reminded me so much of Brian that it hurt. "Excuse me," I said, approaching his table. "Do you know if there's a pharmacy nearby? My phone died and I'm trying to find my prescription." He looked up, startled by the interruption. There's a Walgreens 2 blocks north, on Congress Avenue. Thank you so much." I paused, as if noticing something. "I'm sorry, are you all right? You look like you haven't slept in days." It was forward, presumptuous, the kind of comment a stranger shouldn't make. But Michael Chen was starving for someone to notice, someone to ask, someone to see what his wife had convinced him no one could see. "I'm fine," he said automatically. Then, quieter. "Actually, no, I'm not fine. I haven't been fine in a long time." I sat down across from him. "My name is Ruth. Would you like to talk about it?" He talked for 2 hours. About Sandra, about the control, about the threats and manipulations, about how he had tried to leave once and she had threatened to destroy him, to tell everyone he was abusive, to take everything in the divorce, to make sure he never saw his family again. He talked about the life insurance policy she had taken out, about the accident she kept mentioning, the one that would solve all their problems if he would just trust her. By the end of our conversation, Michael Chen had agreed to wear a wire. 3 weeks later, we had Sandra Chen on tape discussing how she planned to murder her husband and make it look like suicide. She had done it before, she explained. It was easy if you were patient, if you documented the victim's depression beforehand, if you made sure everyone knew how worried you were about them. She was arrested that night. Another member of the network, another predator exposed. But we weren't done. There were more names on our list, more women to find, more victims to save. I flew back to Virginia and drove straight to Brian's apartment. He was cooking dinner when I arrived. Actually cooking, not just surviving on takeout like he had for years with Rebecca. "Texas went well?" he asked. "Yes. Another arrest. Another husband saved. Good." He handed me a glass of wine. "I've been thinking about what you're doing, about the network. I want to help. Not in the field. I know I'm not trained for that, but you need people who understand what the victims are going through, who can talk to them, help them see what's happening. I can do that." I studied my son's face. He was serious, determined, the same determination I had seen in young operatives who had survived something terrible and wanted to make sure no one else went through it. "It would be dangerous," I said. "These women don't hesitate to hurt people who threaten them." "I know. I lived with one for 3 years. He met my eyes. "I'm not asking for permission, Mom. I'm telling you I'm going to help one way or another. I'd rather do it with your support." For a long moment, I didn't speak. I thought about Harold, who had always worried about the risks of our work. I thought about the years I had spent protecting Brian from my real life, only to watch him walk into a different kind of danger entirely. I thought about the network, still operating, still hurting people, still growing in the shadows. "Okay," I said finally. "We'll start with training. Communication protocols, safety procedures, how to recognize manipulation tactics. It won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is." I raised my glass. "To justice, to family," Brian corrected, "and to never underestimating old ladies with intelligence backgrounds." We clinked glasses and drank. Outside, the sun was setting over Virginia, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, other families were suffering the way we had suffered. other sons and daughters were being destroyed by predators who looked like loving partners. We couldn't save everyone, but we could save some. And that was enough. That was more than enough. I thought about Rebecca Mercer, spending her first night in federal prison. I thought about Denise Park, who would never hurt anyone again. I thought about Daniel Vance, finally at rest, his killer brought to justice. And I thought about my son, standing beside me, ready to fight. The mission wasn't over. It might never be over. But for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't fighting alone.